Yo, 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 what is up? It's Cloverdale. Welcome to Cloverdale Studio. This is my brand new channel where I'm going to be sharing everything that's in my brain, all my knowledge and tips and tricks on, whether it's Ableton and producing stuff or music industry stuff or just general advice. Here we go. I'd encourage you guys to like and subscribe and come along for the journey. Today, we're covering my favorite topic in the world. It's drums. I love writing drums and I get so much excitement out of them. I think a great high energy tech house track is nothing without the drums. And so I always do them first. I always write the most banging, filled, exciting drum grooves as I can, even before I move on to the bass lines or the synths or vocals or anything, because I know if I can get a super banging, high energy drum groove, I can kind of put whatever I want under that, and it's still going to have the vibe and the energy and the groove that I'm looking for. So I spend so much time dialing in that drum groove before I move on to anything else. Today, we're going to go over some stuff that I do on probably every single track that I write, some super basics. So I want you guys to try and take these skills and apply them on your own tracks to get these drums feeling a little more lively, a little more groovy, a little bit more exciting and full of life and energy. We're going to start here with the most basic beat we can. That's it. You've all heard it. It's tried and true, tested. That is the house beat right there. All these samples actually coming from the Cloverdale High Octane Drum Kit Volume 1, available now at vibrancylabel.com. I promise that's the only plug I'm going to do for a little bit. All right. So, to make this groovier, let's start by adding some 16th notes. I've done the original drums in audio, but I'm going to do these in MIDI. Because I think MIDI, sometimes you have a little bit more control over some things. I also still love doing a bunch of my drums in audio because I like seeing how long the audio clips are and how much space these certain samples are taking up. But for these 16th notes, let's use MIDI. I'm going to go and take this same hi-hat and drag it down into this MIDI channel. So take it down, drag it down there. It's going to add a little simpler there. And now we have this 16th note. Look at it go. And I can see on my mini meter up here that it is just chugging along and it is playing the same note every single time. There is no groove, no nothing to it. It's sounding like a robot machine gun firing away. So let's go and add some swing. I can go over here to grooves and I'm going to just type in swing. And because it's house music, we're going to be swinging the 16th note. And that is very, very important. Anytime you're adding swing to house music, you want to make sure you're swinging the 16th note, not the 8th. Or the 32nd or something, because the 8th note, this is the 8th note. And if you were swinging that, what you would be doing is you'd be taking this hi-hat and moving it off time. We don't necessarily want that one. We want this little secondary 16th hi-hat, that one to move off time. So to just demonstrate what swing is doing exactly, because I think it's important everybody really realizes what you're doing here. Let's drag one that's pretty exaggerated. The second number when you're looking here is basically how much swing. So 52, not a lot. 73, quite a bit. So let's drag on one of these 68 ones just to see what is happening exactly when you drag a swing groove or any groove onto some MIDI right now. So right here, it looks as if nothing has changed, and nothing has changed. But if we listen to it, oh look, it's now they're do rather than before straight. And you can see the grooves down here. This is where you select your groove and what is actually being applied to the clip. If I hit this little arrow above, that's when we'll see the actual MIDI commit. And that's what that arrow means. On Ableton 10 and 9, there's a little button that says commit. And boom, you can see now that groove is being applied and the MIDI is being swung. And so let me just shorten these notes so we can see the little gap between them so you can get a real feel for it. But if we look here, the main quarter note and the main 8th note are still on time with our kick and our hi-hat. But that second 16th note, so every second note is delayed, right? That's this one. It's not on time. On time would be right here. And so it's delayed quite a bit. And so that's all swing is doing, is it's basically delaying every second 16th note. Now, that's important because we want to just make sure that whatever swing settings and whatever grooves we're applying to our track, we're kind of applying to a bunch of different elements in the song. We want everything to kind of lock and feel like it's in the same groove. So let's drag actually one of these, maybe these lesser swing amounts. 57 is a good one I use often because I find too much swing kind of gets you that like an old school kind of house, jack and house feel. and a little bit less swing gives it a little bit more drivey, techno-y type feel. So we'll do a little bit less. We'll start there. Now, one thing I'm noticing about this hat already is it's really long and washy. So to kind of tame that, we can bring the sustain down and kind of dial in our decay time so it's a nice and tight little hat there. Maybe give it a little bit of attack, and that will tame the transient, won't make the transient as harsh. All right, so let's dial her in there. Now, one thing I always am trying to do is make my drums feel like they're not made on a computer, like they were played by a human, like they have some organic elements to them. So you just don't want them to be perfect and robotic, because our ears, humans, we don't like that. We like human sounding stuff. We like organic sounding stuff. So let's try and make it sound like this wasn't made on a computer. The best way to do that is add some randomness to it. There's this little LFO modulator. This tool is amazing. I use this all over the place for all kinds of things. All it does is I can hit map, and then I can click on any parameter in Ableton. Doesn't matter whether it's on this track or if it's this. Look, I can click on this volume knob, and now this volume knob is modulating based on this sine wave. Crazy. But instead, I'm going to map this to the decay time here. Wow. Look, now it's going up and down based on this sine wave. I'm going to change the sine wave here to random. And so now it's outputting random values, and I can change the rate from hertz to notes. And so now it's timed up to the notes there, and we'll go down to 16th note. And now each one that gets outputted is a different random decay time, which is great, but this kind of sounds ridiculous. So what I want to do is dial in the depth. And so what that's saying is that's kind of picking the maximum and the minimum between the different decay times. Because we want this to be subtle, just a little bit of random. And then maybe bring my offset down. If I bring the offset all the way down, it's really tight and really loud, you know? So I'm just looking here at this decay time and listening, trying to find something that's working. All right, that's working. And then the other thing that I want to do before I move on is just take a listen to what this sounds like pitched up or pitched down by moving this transpose. And you should do this with all of your drum samples. Just listen to them with everything. Take a listen. And say, does this sound better pitched up? Pitched down? And try and just decide which pitch of all of these samples is sounding the best within your song. I actually think maybe pitched down a semitone sounds a little better, a little separation from that other hi-hat. Something else I always like to do on these 16th hi-hats is add a little bit of groove with the open hi-hat. And so how I do that, so we'll solo these two for a second. I'm going to add a compressor to the 16th note hi-hat. I'm going to open up this little box here to open up the sidechain. I'm going to sidechain this from channel 7, the other hi-hat. And these here are just views of the compressor. They don't actually change anything. It's just showing us how the information is being displayed. I'm going to go this last view, which is definitely the best for sidechaining. And I'm going to bring the threshold down a bit. And what that's doing is that's going to start ducking out the volume. The yellow there is basically volume. And so it's ducking out this every time this open hi-hat plays. They're almost grooving in between each other. So that's feeling pretty good. All right, we're going. We're doing something. Okay, so that is locking in a bit of a groove here. We got the 16th note swing. We got some LFO modulating the decay time. We have the compressor, and so it's kind of feeling a little bit more human, a little bit less robotic. That's step one. Step two, let's go try and add some loops maybe to this group. And so you want to make sure that your loops are locked in with the same groove that you got. And a lot of loops come. Let's go in here and find one real quick. We'll do this one. So we'll go down here and grab a loop. I'm going to add a new clip, drag it in, and let's take a listen to this loop. First, make sure that it's warped. In this case, 126, 126. You want to warp it to your BPM. And that's what this loop sounds like on its own. It's already got a hi-hat in it, and it has a little perk thing. Now let's look here and zoom in on the grid, and we'll notice that some of these elements this one and this one and this one aren't on the grid. And so that means there's probably swing already embedded into the sample that you've downloaded. And this is so many loops out there, whether you're grabbing them from Splice or wherever, so many of them already have some groove and some swing embedded into them. So you either need to have your swing on your other elements lock in with the swing that's already there in the loop, or you take the loop and try and match it to your swing settings with your other stuff. So let's take this loop and try and have it match to ours. So the best way to do that to start is to quantize the loop, which is going to take everything and move it back in time. So what you do, right click in the middle, quantize, boom. And if you sometimes have like one note highlighted or something, I actually don't know how that really works. I think if you like click somewhere, anyways, it'll get weird with the quantize. So you got to make sure you don't have anything highlighted and just click right in the middle, because the highlightedness will sometimes only quantize a couple beats. So once you have that done, it's good to double check things, because you'll see here, look, it didn't put a marker there and it didn't put a marker there. It's kind of just trying to pick out the transients on its own, but you might have to manually go in, and there's a little blip here. Maybe you want to manually double click and drag it over so that it matches up. You know, same here. I just saw one, this thing. You know, move that right over so it's right on the grid. Scroll around this one. Move that over so it's on the grid. And move along. Yeah, don't trust Ableton to do all your work for you, folks. It does a pretty good job, but you got to go in and get it all perfect, right? And so now this here is looking pretty good, and it looks like it's totally perfectly on the grid. And once it's totally on the grid, we can go and select our groove down here. And so we're going to select the same groove that we used, which is 57, and that's going to now apply the groove here, which is great. It's going to have the same swing settings, and we're pretty much locked in. Now, this loop that we've added in has like a pretty loud hi-hat to it. And I enjoy that hi-hat, but it might be a little much with our other one. Maybe we want to tighten it up. This trick is super common. If you don't know it, familiarize yourself. I use it all the time, and so do most house producers. And this is a great way to tighten up any loop, is to go in beats mode and bring this down. And what that does is that's creating little fades at each marker. And so it's going to tighten up this loop. Hear the difference? So we're going to tighten that right up. All right. Now, if I didn't really like that hi-hat and maybe I wanted to kind of remove it, and this is something else that I super recommend, I do all the time, is you find a loop that you really like, but there's maybe just one element in there that you don't like. I'll just turn that one element off and try and replace it with like another element that I do like in the song. So maybe it's just like this here. And maybe I get rid of this. Same deal. Copy these over. And eventually, I'm going to get kind of a groove or something that I think is working with my track. And I can eliminate some of those other sounds that don't really need to be there. Anytime I'm doing stuff like this, I like to try and add as many fades as I can, because without the fades, that's how you get clicks. Fades are the key to removing clicks. Clicks come anytime a signal goes from 100% anything just off immediate, or if it goes from off right on immediately without a little fade. So fades are going to be the key. And once you kind of get your groove that you're feeling, that you're enjoying, maybe I'm going to mute this one, figure out what I want to replace it with. You know, let's take a solo listen to this. Basically eliminated all the main open hi-hats, and then kept this one because it's not really lined up over top of one of the open ones. It's kind of an accent hi-hat. So that's kind of like a cool little loop. It's not too much to it. Maybe I'll consolidate it all. So highlight, press Command J, which consolidates it, makes it a new clip, and I can now duplicate this across. Beautiful. This is feeling pretty good. All right. Next up, maybe I want to add some accent hi-hats in some other little places that are going to kind of like spice up the groove a little more. And these accent hi-hats, these are the key to grooviness. Like, you got to fill out these little bits, because if you just keep things basic and keep things as is, it's not going to feel super exciting. So, any of these, really. Let's grab this one, maybe. And I'm going to maybe try and make it real quiet, maybe shorter than it is. Yeah, it's a little long. So you can shorten this one two ways, either bringing it in this way and creating a fade, easy. Or the other way is that same beats mode trick. So warp it, beats mode, have it do the single shot, and then a fade real quick. Easy. And then if you wanted, Command J, and you'll see what that's done. You know, I like to do the fade as well, though, so we can really see what's going on. So I'm going to have this nice and short, real short, maybe a little longer. And then once I have it in there, something I need to do is I need to lock it in with our swing settings, right? And so I can't just go and apply swing to one sample. It's not going to do anything. What I need to do here is manually take a look. Maybe I'll go here, make these notes a little shorter so you can see. And move this so it lines up with the one above. Boom, 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 boom. And this one down here, you see it's not lined up. But the reason being is because we haven't committed the groove. If we actually played the audio, it would line up. So out of our ears, which is all that really matters, it's lined up. But here, visually, just so we can have them all be on the same page. Now that they are all lined up, the grid would be here, but they're slightly delayed. Now we're locking in there somewhere now. Maybe this little accent only just plays like every 2 bars, maybe. Maybe it's just like that. Add so much. Maybe you do the same thing with the clap. You know, maybe take the same clap and you have a little accent clap. We're going to zoom in, move this clap so that it's on the same grid, you know, probably here. So move it back 2. And maybe we'll tighten this up, make it a little tighter of a clap, so it's just sort of a little perky bit. Real tight. Maybe we'll turn it way down. And great, this is all sounding great. So maybe something else you might add might be another clap with like some delay on it or something. Here, what I mean, let me show you. Let me throw one of these in here. So we're going to add this clap, and I have it just sort of hitting the 16th right here. Now, before we go and swing it and have it lock into our groove, I want to do something fun here. First, let's take a listen to the clap on its own. Sounds pretty good. I wonder if it didn't have some of the, made it even shorter, some of this front bit. A little tighter. So let's take this clap and let's put a delay on it. And this is just a fun little way to kind of add some spice to your tracks. Let's add a delay. Woo! Let's ping pong it even. How about that? Woo! All right, that's sounding cool. Let's hear how it sounds with the whole track. And remember, it's not swung right now, so we're going to want to swing it, but I'm showing you a little thing first. Sounding pretty cool, but what I want to do is have that lock into our groove. So let's actually take all of this channel, freeze it, flatten it. All right, freeze, flatten. And now we have that delayed out. So let's take all of this, the whole thing. Maybe we'll do the whole 2 bars. Command J, and now guess what? We can apply our groove to this whole thing. And the reason we wanted to do that is because these little delay bits that are ping-ponging along, some of those are hitting the 16th note. And so some of those, let's apply some groove to them. You know, let's have that all lock in with everything. Sounding great. Maybe a little bit of reverb or something. Sick. All this is sounding great. We got it real grooving. From there, the next step that I would do would be to take all of these instruments, all these drums, except for the kick, and group them. So everything except for the kick, you want the kick to kind of be on its own and doing its own thing. You don't necessarily need to group it and compress it in with all the other drums. Because, if you do that, say you had the kick and the clap, so the compression is going to be different when this plays than when these both play together, because this is going to be much louder at this point. So it's going to kind of turn the kick down and turn the clap down a little bit. That's if you grouped them all together. But we're not doing that. We're going to group all of the drums together without the kick. And when you're compressing drums, there's two things to remember. One, release time, always really, really tight. The reason being, say you had the compression apply, and it applies really loud for this clap, right? This clap sample. And it ducks quite a bit. And then you want it to snap back up right away because you don't want the compression to still be ducking and have it hit one of these other secondary 16th notes, right? So you want it to duck, snap back up right away rather than ducking and staying ducked for a little bit. Okay, so really tight release time, almost as tight as it goes. And then the attack time, if you have a long attack time, what that's going to allow is it's going to allow the transients, the very start of the drum, it's going to allow those to go through the compressor before the compression's applied, and it's only going to compress the tails, which is great. That's a good way to preserve your transients, to really sort of highlight them and to keep them, strong and full. But maybe you find your transients and your drums are too harsh. And if that's the case, maybe you want to have a really short attack time. In this case, we're going to keep it long enough. And I'm just going to bring the threshold down until I start to see some compression being applied. And this is kind of just taking all the different drum elements and leveling out the volumes, making sure that some aren't crazy loud and some aren't super quiet. We're going to kind of level them out and make it all an even playing field. That sounds pretty good. Now let's go. Everything comes down to saturation, right? My favorite saturator for drums is Decapitator. However, if you are just rocking with the Ableton one, that works great, or Saturn, or whatever. They all work good. I love how this kind of, tapes it up, adds some vintage feel to it. I was talking about earlier how we always are trying to make our tracks sound like they weren't made on computers. And that is why there's such a love for old analog type gear like this that are emulating analog sounds, because our ears love the warmness, the organicness, the texture of it. So that's what we're trying to do here. So I just drive this a bit until I start to see. Again, I'm just going to trust my ears. If I do too much, you starts to see, look at the drums. We've lost all our transients. But somewhere in the middle is the sweet spot. And then I can use this knob to do a little bit of brightness if I need to. Maybe I'm finding the drums as a whole are feeling a little dull, so maybe I want to brighten them up. Or vice versa, if I'm finding them a little too harsh in the highs, I could bring this tone knob down. I use this tone knob all the time. In terms of style, I like A. E also sounds great. E I find is maybe a little harsher and brighter. A is a little duller, but both sound great. And then, important if you do decide to use Decapitator, always add an EQ afterwards, and I'll show you why. If I have an EQ before and I hit play, see there's not too much low-end junk, but after Decapitator, look at all this low-end junk. So I just want to get rid of that low-end stuff. All right. We're doing great. Get rid of some of that low-end stuff. This is all sounding good. Now, the last thing that we're going to do to make these drums kind of feel full of life and exciting is kind of put them in a room. We want to give them some room reverb. I'm going to do this on a send channel down here. Ascend/return. They mean the same thing. Let's use a hybrid reverb. The hybrid reverb is great for putting things in rooms and spaces because it uses real measurements. That's what this is. This is a real recording of a real space and real measurements. Because this is on Ascend, anytime we're using any plugins on Ascend, we want to make sure that they're 100% wet, because this knob here kind of acts as our dry wet knob. There's already our dry signal, which goes out from here to the master. This here is just sort of blending a wet signal underneath. We're going to have a pretty tight decay time if we want. I mean, you can have a long one too. A long one is going to make it feel a lot more washed out and reverby, and, maybe if you're writing a techno track. But if you're, even the minimal tech guys will have a really, really tight reverb and tight decay. Listen to how this is sounding with a really, really tight one. Drag that You know, even with a tight one, it still feels like you're putting it in a bit of a space. You can cycle through these. These are all just different rooms and spaces. Some of them sound crazy, some of them sound wild. I like kind of the main one, but I also like some of these ones made for drums as well. So I like to find the one that I like. I have it pretty exaggerated right now. This one's sounding pretty good. And then I'm going to turn it way down. So we just have a little bit. It's barely audible. But the difference between when it's on and when it's off. So this is with it. This is without it. See the difference? And wow, now we got some life. And if any of the individual elements need some more reverb, maybe the clap, you can just give that individual reverb a note. You know, that individual element some reverb. There we go. This is sounding pretty good. And those are some high octane basics from myself, Cloverdale. Hope you guys have learned a lot from this tutorial. If you guys want special for my YouTube viewers, use the code DEMOBUDDY and you can save $5 on the high octane drum kit, volume 1 that I just put out. It's available at vibrancylabel.com. I used all these samples in here from that. I tried to make some samples that are very versatile. You can use them in many situations that you can rely on time after time. Go back to them. I've been using them all summer. I've been writing tons of tunes with them, and I'm really proud of what we got here. So I hope you guys enjoy. As well, if you guys are enjoying learning with me, I offer one-on-one Ableton lessons or any production lessons. I'm just kind of in Ableton, but if you want to, you know, we can talk some high-level stuff. Anyways, one-on-one lessons over Zoom. You can book yours if you want at vibrancylabel.com/lessons. I got a bunch of times up there. You can schedule in whatever you want. That would be a blast. Hopefully you guys learned a ton. Yeah, check out, if you haven't heard of me, check out my music. Hope you guys enjoy it. Check me out on Instagram, @iscloverdale. Drop me a follow. Would love to hear from you guys. Check back soon for more videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe. All right. Love you. Peace. This has been a lot of fun. Bye.